It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk property news 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon this morning. And it is a Friday, June the 7th today. Hope you've had a productive week so far. Heading into another weekend, and this morning we are going to take you offshore to Dubai and talk with Lillian, who we've spoken to before. Now, she moved to Dubai late last year from Queensland to move into real estate. But she is a fully qualified architect, but saw her calling in real estate in Dubai. Now, since we last spoke to Lillian, she has bought herself an apartment, and we are also going to catch up this morning from Dubai as well, Mario, who we have spoken to a couple of times before. But first to you, Lillian, how time flies. These weeks, they're just rocketing by, aren't they?
They do, Craig. Good morning. I can't believe that it's June already. This year has gone by really fast.
We remember, of course, not that long ago, the intense storms and the flooding that impacted Dubai and left a lot of insurance companies really scrambling. People, of course, in the aftermath were in many cases very deeply affected with damage. But something, Lillian, a lot of people won't think about necessarily is what was happening in the shipping lanes around the UAE, and this, in fact, impacted on you.
It did, Craig. So when the floods happened in the middle of April, I thought that I had been very lucky and just observed it from my high-rise apartment. But I've unfortunately had some pretty devastating news just last week. So I contacted the removalists to say that we're ready to get our shipping. So we had this 28-foot shipping container, and it sailed the high seas all the way from Australia. It was packed up in October and it hit the ocean and arrived at the end of March at Jebel Ali port in Dubai. Now, this shipping container holds all of my life's possessions, so furniture, but also artwork, clothes, mementos, books, and just, everything that one collects over a lifetime. So I contacted the shipping company to let them know we were ready, and they came back and said everything has been sitting in nearly a metre of flood water since April 16th. So that's 6 weeks sitting in stagnant water. So obviously we were pretty devastated. I went to the warehouse and spent a whole day there opening up 133 boxes to see what was salvageable. And, nearly everything was water damaged, covered in green mold. There's moisture damage in the electronics. But really the most heartbreaking discovery was all my childhood photos and mementos were completely submerged in water, and they're completely destroyed and can't be saved.
Oh, no. I mean, that is a terrible story, isn't it? Especially off the back of having bought your apartment. You moved, of course, into Dubai, this whole new life, and to lose all of that personal stuff. I mean, that's extremely devastating. As far as insurance is concerned, it does illustrate why people must have insurance, which, of course, you did, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky we've got the insurance. Obviously, we're going to have to jump through some hoops to get it. But really, there's just some things that you can't replace with money. And I think being so far from home, you've got these objects that just are part of your identity. So, I've gone through a range of emotions, anger, sadness, but you just have to look at the bigger picture. And there are so many people in the world, particularly in this region, who are going through so much worse, who have lost absolutely everything. So I am actually grateful that I've got my health, that I'm safe, and that I've got so many family and friends.
Now, I have to ask the question because some people might be wondering, did you manage to back up all of those childhood photos?
Well, unfortunately, no. So I had the originals, and then people from the 80s might remember in the back of an album, there's a little pocket that says negatives. You put your negatives in there, but they're in the same place. So if one gets destroyed, so does the other.
Well, that is the message. If you are moving into Dubai, make sure you take the negatives out. I mean, hindsight is always a perfect science.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, people have suggested to me that we could use AI to try and recreate them. So I'll see how that goes.
And this is really interesting to talk about because it is getting hotter in Dubai. We rely on air conditioning. Hard to imagine living without it. But not everyone, Lillian, has air conditioning at their disposal, particularly if you're outside. So you're thinking about those poor construction workers at the moment.
Oh, always. I think about them always, even if it's not summer. But from the 15th of June, there will be a forced break for people who are working outdoors from midday until 3 p.m. daily. And this actually comes from the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratisation. And during these hours, the employers are basically obligated to provide a shaded or indoor area for workers to rest, to give them water, to ensure their health and safety, because it is the hottest part of the day. And companies that violate this will face a fine of up to 5,000 dirhams per worker. And this will go on until September when it starts to cool down a bit.
Yeah, well, that sort of leads me on to just your personal situation. Of course, the bad news about the shipping, that's one thing. Then we've got your first summer in Dubai. So how do you think you're going to actually cope with this heat?
Well, it's hot. It's beginning of June and it's already personally getting quite unbearable out there. So I was curious. I looked up what the hottest temperature ever recorded in Dubai was. This only happened last year on July 16th. The bulb hit 49 degrees. And the thing is that we often see this feels like temperature on our phones, which is usually higher. So this feels like temperature. It takes environmental data like the ambient air temperature, relative humidity, and the wind, and then it gives us what it actually feels like, which is probably about 60, 65 degrees here in Dubai.
How acclimatised do you feel at the moment? I suppose it's really hard to sort of gauge that because we haven't really hit the peaks yet.
Really not at all. I mean, I'm from Australia where it gets pretty hot every year, but, we've got the beaches there to cool down where the ocean's nice and cold. So not acclimatised yet, but trying.
And you are from the Gold Coast where it is warm, but not as hot as Dubai. All right, well, great to talk again. Not so great about losing all of your personal belongings, but do let us know whether AI can resolve the problem, and enjoy your Friday.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig, and speak to you next time.
We talk to some of the most influential figures in the real estate industry, from leading commentators to investors to real estate principals, only on the Real Estate Podcast.
Now, if you are heading to live in Dubai like Lillian has done, there is a consideration to think about if you want to work from home, because there are these designated areas that you can do that from. And the reason is not all of Dubai lets you run your office from home. And back to the breakfast conversation this morning is Mario Volpi, who has some of those locations in mind that do offer some great value regarding buying properties to work from home. So what have you got for us this morning, Mario, where people can do that?
I can think of two good areas that would fit this bill. One area is called Barsha Heights. Now, this was formerly known as TCOM. The area is great for remote working because it's really well connected to both Sheikh Zayed Road and the Al Khail Road, and not too far from Dubai Internet City Metro Station. This is important, obviously, in case for connectivity. The location also has good combination of residential apartments and hotel apartments. The other popular area to work from would be Jumeirah Lakes Towers, and this area is served by the DMCC Free Zone. Now, this has two metro stations, and there are at least 80 towers within the master community to choose from. And one area is called Uptown, which is destined to be very popular, where residents can live, play, and work. This whole area has been designed for the work from home fraternity, actually.
I wonder just how many of these developers are sort of lobbying the government, the land department, in terms of these work from home areas, these designated areas, because they're very quick to pivot, and you kind of wonder whether they're going to open that up over a period of time, maybe in the next 12 months, so that there are more areas that people can work from home.
I agree, and they should look at that, to be honest with you, because in Dubai, it's all luxury. Sometimes somebody may look at something a little bit more affordable, depending on the area. But these are just the two sort of areas that developers focus on. They don't really focus by thinking outside the box. And I think working from home, especially for some of these industries that it's ripe for that, they would also have a lot of interest. So they're not really thinking, as I say, outside the box and trying to generate more diverse buyer groups, to be honest with you.
And since we're talking about developers, Mario, some of these local developers there in Dubai have been fined.
Yeah, this is hitting the news wires just a short while ago, and we found out that the Dubai Land Department has fined these three developers, although interestingly, they don't actually name them. They've been fined 500,000 dirhams each for promoting and marketing real estate projects without completing the required registration procedures for off-plan projects. Now, this is in accordance with Law Number 8 of 2007. The escrow account, for the listeners, is a bank account designated for a real estate project where the funds collected from buyers of off-plan units are deposited, and the account aims to regulate the construction process of the units sold, ensuring the protection of the investor's rights. Now this is quite significant because obviously, let's say 16 years ago when I first started, regulations weren't necessarily in place. So you had developers selling projects where they didn't even own the land. So it was really important that they quickly regulated to give safety to the investors, and that has now happened. So the fact that these three developers, as I say, they're not named, have been hauled over the coals and made public that the Land Department have fined them just to ensure investors here do feel safe and comforting that their protection is paramount in the eyes of the law.
Yes, investor property protection when buying, no matter which country you are in, is always greatly appreciated. Well, thank you so much, Mario, for that information. Enjoy your weekend coming up in Dubai.
Thanks very much, Craig.
If you're confused about the property market, don't be. Unlock and educate yourself with the latest trending analysis and interviews.
A big portion of that strata fee is building insurance. In Brisbane, we had a major flood event back in 2022, and I think that's increased a lot of the insurances as part of the levies as well. People tend to be more drawn to these older apartment styles because in Brisbane, $4,000 to $5,000 is on the cheaper side.
Tell us about this among some buyers, that new apartments are not built as well as the older apartments. Now, I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong, but you're dealing with people that have that perception.
You know, it's funny, and a lot of people say to me, they don't make them like they used to. It can come quite true with apartments. We find often cheaper builds where they're trying to cram as many into the complex to maximise profits. Yes, we do see a lot more issues at building and pest inspections with those styles of properties than we do at older properties.
Ready to step up your property knowledge? Access powerful insights with us. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.